Hello and welcome to Brain Power. I'm your host Thomas Trombley, and we'll be discussing topics ranging from current news, world events, and religion, basically whatever bit of news that catches my eye. If you have a story you'd like covered here or a question you'd like answered, send me a message on Twitter at BrainPowerUp. Use the hashtag BrainPowerUp, like the group at facebook.com/BrainPowerOnline, or visit the website at brainpoweronline.webs.com. Today is Saturday, August 22nd. Like I said, for the next few weeks or so, I'm going to have a little bit of difficulty with the normal Sunday schedule. So I'll just be putting these episodes out on Saturday as opposed to Sunday. So, whoop-de-doo, they're a day early. That's better early than late, right? Anyway, we're gonna start things off today with kind of a really funny story. I thought it was pretty good. It seems that a parrot in India may have grounds for a lawsuit after police detained it without evidence for allegedly hurling obscenities at an 85-year-old woman. Over the past 2 years, the woman claims she has been subjected to bad language and foul words from the parrot named Hariel every time she walks by her stepson's house, according to the Telegraph. She says her stepson trained the bird to insult her. Police called all three, woman, stepson, and parrot, into the station on Tuesday, but NDTV reports the parrot appeared to know when to keep its mouth shut. We watched the parrot carefully, but it did not utter a word at the police station, one inspector says. Regardless, the parrot was put into custody of the forestry department because of the woman's harassed mental condition. The Telegraph points out the woman and her stepson are in an ongoing property dispute. I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny, just the idea of, a bird being placed under arrest. Not only that, but it's, even if this were true, parrots don't know language. They don't understand human words. You can't actually have a conversation with a parrot like you can on TV. It's... All the parrot knows is how to make those noises. So they're basically, just mocking us humans. Really, it's they're not actually speaking. They're just, parroting back what they heard. Sorry, I couldn't resist the pun there. But yeah, just the thought of a parrot getting arrested. To me, that's funny. Anyway, speaking of animals and language, this one's kind of interesting, as I would have never thought about this. Researchers have long assumed that speaking is an impossibility for apes because they can't properly control their vocalizations or their breathing. But now, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Wisconsin is reporting in the journal Animal Cognition that apes may in fact be closer to talking than we thought. Marcus Perlman and colleagues reached this conclusion after watching 71 hours of 40-year-old gorilla Coco, best known for learning American Sign Language, as she interacts with researchers. They discovered that she repeatedly performs 9 different behaviors assumed to be outside the ability of apes, including blowing her nose into a tissue, playing wind instruments, huffing moisture onto glass before cleaning it, chattering into a telephone, and coughing on command. She doesn't produce a pretty, periodic sound when she performs these behaviors like we do when we speak, Perlman says, but she can control her larynx enough to produce a controlled grunting sound. This discovery may throw a wrench in the theory that speech evolved only in humans since we were last linked to chimpanzees. Coco's specific behaviors aren't proof of her exceptionality, just her potential given the right set of circumstances. In this case, 40 years of immersion in a mostly human world, reports UPI. Coco bridges a gap, Perlman says. It's not as fine as human control, but it is certainly control. See, now that's kind of cool. It's kind of creepy at the same time if you think about it. We're just, one or two steps away from Rise of the Planet of the Apes then, but just the idea that that humans aren't the only ones that are capable of vocal language. I honestly believe, I could be wrong, but and actually I just want to point out, I don't know the first thing about biology or zoology or whatever, but I believe that if an animal can be trained to use vocal language, even if it's as simple as a system of grunts, just means I'm hungry, means I want to play or whatever. The point being is, language is not merely a human thing. We've already proven that with Coco when she was learning sign language, which is pretty awesome. I don't know what the lifespan on apes is. I hope that she lives long enough to where maybe she can eventually, start to form words, or at least come closer to like a human speech pattern. But pardon me, I think it's time for coffee or something. Anyway. Still, I mean, that's something that really excites me to think of that. I hope that I hope that research goes somewhere. Got a actually, here's another really awesome story. This actually dovetails in with a story I mentioned in a previous episode. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which episode it was. I know it was a few episodes back. I'm actually scanning through my episode list here, see if I can figure it out real quick. You'd figure this is something I would have tried to think of first, but... there we go. It was episode 1513. I mentioned, talked about a girl who tried to sue for the right to register for the draft. I think there was even an earlier episode. Let's see here. All right, well, I'm actually not even going to bother looking for it anymore. In one of the earlier episodes, I talked about how there were a group of females that went in through Ranger School, U.S. Army Rangers. And this is an interesting story based on that. The first female soldiers to complete the Army's rigorous Ranger School pinned on their black and gold Ranger tab at a graduation ceremony today to cap their history-making week. At a ceremony on the shore of Victory Pond at Fort Benning, First Lieutenant Shane Haver of Culperis Cove, Texas, and Captain Kristen Greast of Orange, Connecticut, graduated alongside 94 male soldiers. Their success casts new attention on the obstacles that remain to women who aspire to join all-male combat units, including the 75th Ranger Regiment. Although Haver and Greast are now Ranger qualified, no women are eligible for the elite regiment, although that could change eventually. Greast, 26, is a military police officer and has served one tour in Afghanistan. Haver, 25, is a pilot of Apache helicopters. Both are graduates of West Point. Of 19 women who began the Ranger course, Haver and Greast are the only two to finish so far. One is repeating a prior phase of training in hopes of graduating soon. Greast told reporters yesterday she hopes her success shows that women can deal with the same stresses and training that men can. Now, once again, for me, that's a big thing. And it should be a big thing for anybody who cares about equality and I honestly believe that if a woman can meet the standards that are set forth, there is no reason whatsoever why that woman cannot do that job, whatever that job happens to be, not just military, but I mean, spanning all fields, all different jobs, all different enterprises, whatever. There is no reason why a woman cannot do what a man can do. I mean, unless there's some odd biological thing that we don't know about, or some factor that's relevant to, okay, maybe. You know, do I think a woman should be a leader of a Boy Scout troop? No, not really. But the inverse is true as well. Do I think a man should be the leader of a Girl Scout troop? No, probably not. I mean, not that there's that huge of a problem with it, but yeah, you know, it's let's just keep that separate. But can a woman be a firefighter? Oh, hell yes. Can a woman be a soldier? Oh, hell yes. Can a woman be... Oh, goodness, what's another field that women are generally disparaged for joining in? Can a woman be a noted scientist? Hell yes. Oh, it's just, there's no reason why, if somebody can meet the requirements, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do it. Anyway, moving on. Let's actually move on to a story about Ben Carson. One of the guys running for the Republican ticket for presidency. In the recent Republican presidential debate, retired neurosurgeon Ben Carson said he would base a new tax system on the biblical system of tithing. I think God is a pretty fair guy, he said. And he said, if you give me a tithe, it doesn't matter how much you make. If you've had a bumper crop, you don't owe me triple tithes. And if you've had no crops at all, you don't owe me no tithes. So there must be something inherently fair about that. He added, and that's why I've advocated a proportional tax system. Pardon. You make $10 billion, you pay $1 billion. You make $10, you pay $1. And everybody gets treated the same way. And you get rid of the deductions, you get rid of all the loopholes. But more importantly, the system of tithing would just be the beginning, an introduction, if you will, because sooner or later people would find ways to cheat it, and the whole system would inevitably be thrown out of balance once again. That's why I believe that a tax system based on sin would be a more permanent, cheat-proof solution. Asked to elaborate, Carson said, well, basically the system would work something like this. Taxes would be calculated at the end of each tax year or fiscal period. We would decide that later on. And then a person's earnings would be compared and weighed against the amount or number of sins they have committed during the said tax period. Basically, the number of sins a person commits would be translated into a tax. The neurosurgeon turned presidential candidate also added that the exact amount of sin one commits would have to be measured by some sort of religious test. I'm not a priest or a minister, so I'm less familiar with the methodology of religious tools and the way in which they're used, but I'm sure we would have no trouble finding or even developing an accurate test and measure of people's wrongful actions. As a matter of fact, that's the first thing I plan to do if I'm elected president. After all, religion in general, and Christianity in particular, does have a proven track record of judging believers unmistakably for their sinful behavior, right? Carson opined. Yeah, see, that's one of those reasons why Ben Carson will not be getting my vote. I honestly hope that everybody that has heard this story already, or everybody that's hearing it just now for the first time, whatever, I'm hoping that everybody looks at this and goes, great, another religious whack job. Okay, yeah, we're not voting for him. Yeah, on kind of a somewhat related note, mainly because it's another Republican we're talking about, it's time for my favorite section, Asshole of the Week. Guess who it is? Go on, guess. I know you want to guess. I know you know the answer. Asshole of the Week is yet again Mr. Donald Trump. A savage beating in Boston is making headlines because of its connection to Donald Trump. In fact, a headline at The Atlantic calls it a Trump-inspired hate crime. Police say two brothers set upon a homeless Hispanic man sleeping outside a subway station, leaving him with a broken nose, battered arms, and a bruised chest. Cops say Scott Leader, 38, and Steve Leader, 30, also urinated on the 58-year-old's face before walking away laughing, reports the Boston Globe. Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported, Scott Leader is quoted as telling the police. Trump's reaction isn't helping. When informed of the attack, he said he hadn't heard about it, but added that it would be a shame if his immigration comments inspired it, reports the Boston Herald. But then he added, I will say the people that are following me are very passionate. They love this country, they want this country to be great again. But they are very passionate, I will say that. A blogger at Vox is astonished. Instead of unequivocally denouncing the attack, Trump framed it as a moderately regrettable downside of his movement's passion. The victim is recuperating in the hospital, and the brothers were jailed on assault charges. I agree with this unnamed blogger. As upon hearing that my words inspired somebody to go beat somebody half to death and put him in the hospital, no, it's my first reaction would be, I don't want anyone to think that my words inspired this. I don't want anyone to think that that is my opinion. I would do the best I could to let people know, hey, I did not approve of this action. I did not intentionally make this happen. I would feel exceptionally terrible about it, and I would let people know that I felt terrible about it. But not the Donald. Not good old man DT. Which, of course, is why Donald Trump is Asshole of the Week this week. Yeah. Always good times when he is around. Anyway, moving on. Here we go. Sticking with the political angle, but going a lot less political. I actually don't even know why this story is a story. That being said, I'm not even sure why I opened it up. But anyway, we'll go ahead and read it anyway. President Obama seems to be preparing for his post-presidential life unlike any president that came before him. The New York Times today uses a private February dinner at the White House to illustrate a key part of the process. At the dinner, Obama schmoozed into the wee hours with a who's who of big names in fields ranging from technology to entertainment. And the piece includes a nugget sure to please the makers of a certain vodka. Guests say his drink of choice at the gatherings is an extra dry Grey Goose martini. The president wasn't hitting up the guests for money, yet, but the big goal is to eventually create an endowment of up to $1 billion to fund not just a state-of-the-art library, but a host of initiatives ranging from helping minority youths, healthcare, climate change, and income inequality. Obama is using such informal sessions to sound out ideas and hear new ones, reports the Times. He loves those sessions, says one advisor. They're very nourishing to him. Among the guests at the February dinner, LinkedIn's Reid Hoffman, authors Toni Morrison and Malcolm Gladwell, hedge fund manager Mark Lasry, venture capitalist John Doerr, and actress Ava Longoria. No, I suppose if you take the whole story in context, it's mostly a story just about how he's planning to raise his money for his presidential library and the things that he wants to do after his presidency. But the headline is actually, here is President Obama's cocktail of choice. It's just totally random, but I gotta say I've actually been known to enjoy a good vodka martini myself every once in a while, but I don't know if I'd spring for Grey Goose. That stuff's way too expensive. You take what would be a $6.50, $7 drink, turn it into a $12, $15 drink just by adding Grey Goose. But anyway, yeah. It's kind of funny though with the Rangers story that I just covered a couple stories back. I'm kind of doing another thing here. Same idea of harkening back to a previous story. Excuse me. This one, I believe, was actually off of last episode. It was not. Maybe the episode before. Yep, it was the episode before. Episode 1516 covered a story about two girls who savagely attacked a classmate. Well, there's a little bit more news surrounding their case. Two 13-year-old Wisconsin girls accused of luring their friend into the woods to repeatedly stab her as a sacrifice to the fictitious Slenderman character pleaded not guilty today. The teens from the Milwaukee suburb of Waukesha are being tried as adults and face decades in prison if they are convicted in the 2014 attack. A judge entered not guilty pleas on behalf of both girls at a brief arraignment hearing. The girls did not speak today, notes the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Their victims somehow survived the attack, and each faces a charge of attempted first-degree intentional homicide. Investigators have said the two plotted for months to lure their friend Peyton Lautner into the woods after a sleepover. They intended to kill her, police say, to win the favor of Slenderman, described as an unnaturally tall and thin man who wears a dark suit and has no visible facial features. Slenderman stories have proliferated online in recent years. They wanted to kill for him, in part, to prove his existence, police documents allege. The girls, 12 at the time of the stabbing, believed they would have a home in Slenderman's mansion if they carried out the attack, police say. You know, this is kind of it's a very sad story. I gotta say, I'm very happy to hear that the victim survived. Here's hoping that she goes on to make a full and complete recovery, but obviously there's going to be some psychological damage, and that, I think, is the big issue here in this case. Just assuming that this girl makes a full and complete recovery, she's still going to be pretty messed up because of this. And, you know, the girls may have been 12 years old at the time, which, let's be honest, 12, you don't fully know what you're doing, but you kind of know. I mean, you do know right from wrong, or at least you should. You should be able to tell fiction from reality. It's just not right. And, you know, I do believe that, yes, these girls should be tried as adults. If they were tried as kids, they'd be out as soon as they hit 18 or 21. I don't remember exactly. The point is, they need to go away. They need to be punished heavily for this. Once again, I can only hope that the victim makes a complete recovery. Yeah. So, moving on from that exceptionally sad note, here we go, here's a different one. Indiana mayor declares Walmart a public nuisance. An Indiana mayor has finally reached his breaking point after a third serious incident in as many months led police to a local Walmart store on Thursday. So, he's declared it a public nuisance. Police say Jalacy Samples, 42, waved a gun at employees of the Beech Grove location after he was caught shoplifting, then ran to a nearby restaurant where he shot himself in the head. Samples, who was wanted on 2 outstanding warrants, was listed in critical condition on Friday, reports the Indianapolis Star. Within 2 weeks back in June, an alleged shoplifter at the same store was involved in a car crash that killed a 63-year-old woman while fleeing police, the Star reported. 2 women were also charged after getting into a brawl in the store's shampoo aisle. For a period of time, there were not any Beech Grove police officers patrolling the streets of Beech Grove because we were down at Walmart again dealing with an irrelevant shoplifter. A police rep told WTHR of Thursday's incident, noting the public nuisance designation will allow police to fine the store up to $2,500 per call. From February 2014 to mid-June, police made 1,278 visits to the store, resulting in 473 arrests. A Walmart representative says some shoplifters can enter a restorative justice program and pay a fine rather than be arrested, limiting police visits. But police say calls have spiked over the last 2 weeks. I don't want to get a phone call every day saying that somebody pulled a gun at Walmart and has done something out of line, Mayor Dennis Buckley says. That store is a real problem. You know, the sad part is, I mean, there's places like that all over the country, all over the world, really, where crime rates just happen to be pretty bad in that area. It is kind of nice, though, to see a governor finally saying, okay, you know what, enough is enough. We can't just keep sending the cops out here. You guys need to do something yourselves to help prevent crime. You need to do something to make this go away. You know, which I think is one of the many ways to, you know, to lead towards a better society, but just my thought. Anyway, here's kind of a fun story, but it's kind of a long one, so I'll try and parse through it as best I can. The IRS is getting pressured to begin cracking down on televangelists, following a John Oliver segment on HBO's Last Week Tonight. Oliver blasted televangelists this past Sunday for what he called seed faith, where they tell donors they will reap the rewards by giving money to them. They preach something called the Prosperity Gospel, which argues that wealth is a sign of God's favor, and donations will result in wealth coming back to you. That idea sometimes takes the form of seed faith, the notion that donations are seeds that you will one day get to harvest. He continued, the argument is, sow your money into the ground and you will reap returns multiple times over. Except as an investment, you'd be better off burying your money in the actual ground, because at least that way there's a chance your dog may dig it up and give it back to you one day. People have donated millions to televangelists through the prosperity gospel, believing by giving money God will help them. They keep trying to send more money so they can get healed. Trinity Foundation President Ole Anthony, whose group investigates religious fraud, told CBS News. Anthony explained to CBS News that televangelists are able to receive millions because the IRS has turned a blind eye to their tax-exempt churches. A few years ago, the IRS named Scientology a church. Since that happened, anybody can call themselves a church, Anthony said. I would read more, actually, but I believe Mr. John Oliver himself can do a much better job at this than I can. I'm actually going to play for you guys a little clip from that episode, and yeah, you'll see exactly what I mean. Here it is.
And that is when I realised the message Robert Tilton was sending me was that I should set up my own church to test the legal and financial limits of what religious entities are able to do. And so, that is what we have done. We filed paperwork last week establishing a church called Our Lady of Perpetual Exemptions. And it was disturbingly easy. To make sure we did this correctly, we had this actual tax lawyer walk us through the process. Now, while the IRS does not have a definition of a church, they do have a 14-point test as a guideline for churches. But not only do you not have to meet all 14 points, we'd already met some of them by accident. For instance, you need an established place of worship, but we meet every Sunday in this studio in New York, and apparently that genuinely counts. Our lawyer also advised us our church needed to be a distinct legal entity, so we registered our church as a non-profit corporation in Texas, a state I do not live in, have never lived in, but which is somehow completely fine for us to incorporate a church in. Now, the IRS's guidelines suggest you need a creed and form of worship, but our lawyer suggested we could fulfil the worship requirement by merely leading everyone in some specific ritual, such as having congregants silently meditate on the nature of fraudulent churches. So, let us do exactly that and bow our heads in silent contemplation. And lo, another box was ticked. Amen. And finally, according to our attorney, the best case for church membership will be made by those individuals who are actually present in the live studio audience, who will profess belief in the church's creed. So what do you say, live studio audience? Do you profess your belief? I said, do you profess your belief tonight, brothers and sisters? Then there is only one thing left for us to do. Let's go to church. Brothers and sisters, welcome to Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. I am your Mega Reverend, thank you, brothers and sisters, your Mega Reverend and CEO, John Oliver, and can I tell you, I am so blessed tonight. So blessed to be joined by my radiant wife, Wonder Jo Oliver. Please welcome her. Wonder Jo. Wonder Jo, praise be.
And he goes on and on from there. He's very, very satirically just asking people for donations, and if you send me this money, I will heal you. For all my viewers at home on television, if you have what did he say? If you have lupus, put your hand on the television screen, and I will heal you. Just making all these televangelist type claims, which everybody knows are false. Pardon. Or at least anybody with half a brain knows are false. Just pointing out the fact that it's exceptionally easy to get away with crap like that. So, I just find it funny though that because of that, it's just showing the remarkable power of social media and just global outreach programs and things like that. The idea is now, because of this one episode of a television show, it's, a comedy news show. It's people, the IRS is actually being forced into action because of this. That's awesome. And I don't mean awesome as in like that's so totally awesome, dude. I mean awesome as in the actual dictionary definition of the word awesome. It is awe-inspiring. It leaves me full of awe just thinking that it's that easy to bring about change, to bring about an effort to get things done. I don't know, it's just me. I could be wrong. I don't know, but once again, it really makes me feel really good. And of course, to dampen the mood now that I do feel really good, the Duggar family continues to address things like a family. In a statement posted to the family website in the wake of yesterday's report about his alleged Ashley Madison accounts, Josh Duggar starts as follows. I've been the biggest hypocrite ever. While espousing faith and family values, I have secretly over the last several years been viewing pornography on the internet, and this became a secret addiction, and I became unfaithful to my wife. He goes on to express shame about his double life, and acknowledges that his actions as a teen hurt his friends, family, and fans, and that he has re-broken their trust. Though he's light on details, he says his personal failings have gone on for the last few years. He continues, as I'm learning the hard way, we have the freedom to choose our actions, but we do not get to choose our consequences. I deeply regret all hurt I have caused so many by being such a bad example. He asks for forgiveness and for prayers for his immediate family. For my precious wife Anna and our family, His statement was preceded on the page by a brief one from his parents, who say they are heartbroken but continue to place trust in God and ask for your prayers for Josh, Anna, our grandchildren, and our entire family. It's the only reason this family got famous at all was because Jim Bob, which, that's one hell of a name, Jim Bob. Jim Bob fucks like a jackrabbit. All right? What does he have? 19 kids, was it? It's just, holy crap, man. That's when the only reason you're famous is because you don't know when to stop having kids. Oh no, I'm sorry. He knows it, but it's God told him to every time, never use a condom or birth control or hell, even pull out. It's. I don't think this should even be a story. I don't think this should be a thing, just because, once again, I don't think they should have been famous in the first place. And the same thing goes for the Kardashians, too. It's when you're famous because Kim spread her legs, you know what? You're famous for the wrong reasons, okay? Unless you're actually like a porn star, like Jenna Jameson is famous for spreading her legs, but you know what? That's what she does for a living, okay? And she's probably better at it anyway. And that's... I don't want to get off on a rant here, so I'm just... I'm going to move on to another story. Oh, moving on. How much time we got? Oh my goodness. Got about 9 minutes left. That's a lot more than I expected. Well, we got some really bad news. If you're living in the north, like I am, I swear, if this is real, yeah, I'm shipping out on the next plane south. It's just when you thought you'd gotten over last winter, be warned. The old Farmer's Almanac predicts it will be super cold with a slew of snow for much of the country, even in places that don't usually see too much of it, like the Pacific Northwest. Look for above normal snow and below normal temperatures for much of New England, icy conditions in parts of the South, and frigid winter in the Midwest. The snowiest periods in the Pacific Northwest will be in mid-December, early to mid-January, and mid to late February, the almanac predicts. Just about everybody who gets snow will have a white Christmas in one capacity or another, editor Janice Stillman said from Dublin, New Hampshire, where the almanac is compiled. It's due out in the coming week. The almanac says there will be above normal rainfall in the first half of the winter in California, but then that will dry up and the drought is expected to continue. We don't expect a whole lot of relief, Stillman says. The weather predictions are based on a secret formula that founder Robert B. Thomas designed using solar cycles, climatology, and meteorology. Forecasts emphasize how much temperature and precipitation will deviate from 30-year averages compiled by government agencies. Meteorologists generally poo-poo the almanac's forecasts as too unscientific to be worth much. It's scientific or not. Again, if this turns out to have any measure of accuracy, I've just over the last few years, I've finally just been getting more and more fed up with winter. I live in Minnesota, which the rest of the country knows as Snowtown, basically, or South Canada. Summer here is not too bad. I suppose the summer here is pretty much like it is everywhere else. Generally around 80s, 90s, whatever. We got hot days. We got a couple rainy days here and there. But the point is, it's pretty normal everywhere. Winters, not so much. We got lucky here last winter. Last winter, I think average temperature was like 10 above, something like that. That was pretty darn good for a Minnesota winter. especially considering the winter before it, we had, there were at least 5 days that were negative 20. You know, as comedian Lewis Black once put it, that's not weather. That's an emergency situation. That's when you call the government and say, "Get me the fuck out of here." You know, if they're predicting another winter like that, negative 20s, negative 30s, no. Plane tickets, here I come. Again, just my thoughts. But, which is awesome, because that makes me think of warm thoughts, which, you know, here's a story about fire, so that's kind of a warm thought. A man who police say took out his aggressions on 2 teddy bears after a breakup is behind bars on arson charges, reports the Commercial Appeal of Memphis. The arson allegation is because 25-year-old Marche Frenard allegedly doused one of the stuffed bears with lighter fluid and set it ablaze in his girlfriend's home after she dumped him. He also allegedly sliced open another teddy bear with a knife. Frenard eventually left, but allegedly threatened to return and burn down the home, say police. The burning bear didn't cause any damage. Frenard threw it in the fireplace. But he's still charged with aggravated arson along with domestic violence. You know, I suppose I'm no lawyer, I'm no cop, I don't know much about legal definitions, but, you know, I can see him being charged with arson on this one. Even though the home was fine, he actually kind of took precautions by putting it in the fireplace, but you still went into someone else's home when I'm assuming he was not invited, and left a burning object there. That's no, you know what? That's arson. That's arson. The domestic violence thing, that one, I'm not so certain. I mean, unless it can be proven, you know, that he has hit her or pushed her or something, you know, physically did something wrong to her. Otherwise, I wouldn't call it violence. I'd call it act of terror or extreme mental abuse. I don't know what you would call it, but domestic violence, I think, is going a little far. But once again, like I said, I'm no cop. I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. So, yeah. What time we got? I got time for maybe a short one, which, luckily enough, I had a really short one queued up, but I cut it because it seemed like it was too short. Now I gotta find the darn thing. There you go. This one should work for the 2.5 minutes I have left. Another example of when you shouldn't call 911. It's another important public reminder about the 911 system. Calling to complain about your Chinese food is not an acceptable use of it. A woman in Alliance, Ohio found that out when she phoned in from a local Chinese restaurant to gripe about the quality of her food and the staff's refusal to refund her money, reports WKYC. When the dispatcher sounded a little irritated by this, the woman sarcastically asked if it would be better if she climbed over the counter to confront the employees. The caller, 44, faces a misdemeanor charge of misusing 911 and is due in court this week. So yeah, it's kind of a funny little side bit there. It's, you know, it is a good example of when not to call 911. But anyway, we are short on time now, so this has been Brain Power. The next show will be Saturday, August 29th. And as usual, if you have a story you'd like covered here or a question you'd like answered, send me a message on Twitter at BrainPowerUp. Use the hashtag BrainPowerUp. Like the group at facebook.com/brainpoweronline or visit the website at brainpoweronline.webs.com. And that is a wrap.